All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining. Bruno, everybody's coming in nicely, so it's all yours.
Thank you, Juan. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you are. It's a pleasure to be here. This is our first coaching education webinar. The idea is to try to gather people every now and then to share ideas, to share experiences, so that all of us can grow with information from each other, and we can create a community where we take things from another, we share, and we all can learn and improve the way we will do our things, so that in the end the players that are affected by our actions and our decisions, they can also improve and to grow the game. That's the idea. Today we have Gonçalo. I have the pleasure of I have been working with Gonçalo for many years now. Not only a great professional, but a good friend. He has the luck, but also the competences required to work in the highest level. His eyes already saw many amazing football players when they were young, and is responsible for decisions that already changed the game for many players and for important clubs. So it's a pleasure to have Gonçalo here. Thank you, Gonçalo, for coming. Everyone that is participating here is already registered for the next webinars. We are trying to bring people from highest places all over the world, but also from here in California. So hopefully we can grow as we go, and finding people to participate and to share their ideas and their views on how things are. So, Gonçalo, do you want to start by introducing yourself?
Sure. First of all, my name is Gonçalo Bexiga, as I think you know. I've been seeing on social media my picture and name circulating on Calçout's Instagram page and whatnot, the website also. First of all, I'd like to say thank you, Bruno, for inviting me. Thank you, Juan, for participating also and helping us with this. And thank everybody that is watching. Thank everybody that has registered and will be watching me share a little bit of my pathway up till the point of today. I would like to state first of all that, and this is the most important for me, even though there is some objective information inside the presentation, this is pretty much my view of what is the activity of recruitment scouting and how it is and what it is to recruit the best possible talent for our organization. I accept and I encourage even that there are questions and points of disagreement, and I hope that all of the people that are watching can take something from this. If not a lot, at least a little bit. But as I said, and this is very important point to me, don't take anything that I say as a universal truth, but use it as maybe a point of departure for you to start questioning more, start reading more, start seeing more about scouting, and improve yourselves in this activity to make it even better for yourselves and even for me. Okay, so open to any questions, open to disagreement, open to everything. Second thing, and second most important thing, the nature of my job is one of big secrecy, especially in the moment at first team level. As you know, it's a business that involves a lot of money and a lot of responsibility. So I would tell you, try to please avoid specific questions about Alain Football Club, and the process of recruiting the players that are here in particular. let's go in a more broad view that I have about scouting, and not so much in the specifics of what I do presently on a day-to-day basis, because, as you know, for me, it's very hard to talk about this, not only by a question of ethics, of course, and most importantly, but also because I have contract clauses that prevent me from doing this, and I can lose my job or something even worse. Okay, so if you want me to start the presentation, I can start right now, and then obviously I will be open for questions. And as I suggested, maybe in the end of each topic, we can open it for questions from the people watching. And feel free to interrupt me, Bruno or Juan, if you have any question that you need to be answered in the moment. Okay, does that work with you?
Yes.
Would you like to do the poll now or a little bit after?
Sure. Go ahead.
All right, so we have a poll for interaction to everybody. Who is on the call? We got to know our audience. Are you a new coach, 1 to 2 years, a soccer player, manager, administrator, DOC? Are you a veteran coach who's been out there on the battlefield, or are you a spectator and a parent? You can pick multiple ones, and once we get to 80%, Gonçalo will tell us what he thinks from the poll.
While everyone is answering the poll, I realized that I didn't properly introduce myself. Sometimes I think that people already know who I am, but it's not the case. My name is Bruno Pereira. I'm the new director of player development for Cal South. I have been working here since January, and I'm responsible for all the education that is happening parallel to the certifications. So if your club is a member of Cal South and you would like to learn more about coaching, if you would like a coaching clinic, if you would like to improve how you do feedback, how to design a training session, if you are having issues with having a small field but having a lot of kids to coach, then please reach out to us so that I can go to the club, I can speak with you guys, and we can together find strategies to improve the things that we do, so that we can grow together. Okay, that's the idea of my role. I'm 100% available to all our members, and the idea is to use all the platforms we can to help everyone to grow and to improve what we do. That's it. So now we have Juan, if you want to take over the poll.
Yeah, so here's the poll. As you can see, Gonçalo, we have 38% in the lead. We have coaches over 3 years. We have some parents, DOCs, players, so you have a big variety.
That's good. Should we carry on?
Yes, carry on.
Okay, so everybody's seeing my presentation now, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so a little bit about myself. My name is Gonçalo Bexiga, as I told you before, and I started also as a coach my career in football, and I started in the year of 2002. I was still a player when I started coaching, and I started coaching at the youth level at a small club in the neighborhood where I grew up, which is Olivais in Lisbon, the capital of Portugal. And I am extremely proud of this part of my career because I started from really small club with no big conditions. I did mostly voluntary work. I was not paid for my job as a coach, but it gave me a lot of tools that I still use until the present day. And I was very happy also to give back to this club because I played there for 12 years. To be able to give back a little bit for this club and the people involved, just how much they gave to me as I was growing up, because I started playing there when I was a 10-year-old. So in 2006, I got an offer to join Benfica as an academy scout. This was in the time that Benfica was finishing their new academy, their new training center through the south side of Lisbon. It's an amazing facility, and there was a big investment starting in 2006 when it was ready to make sure that we took Benfica to the level that it should be in terms of youth. The youth sector of the club had been asleep, sort of saying, for many years due to some higher management decisions. But the people that took over 2003, I believe, they had this project and they had this passion about bringing the youth system of the club, which was a sleeping giant, back to the highest standards possible. And I was very lucky to be invited to the very beginning of this project. And I grew with the club. I grew with the people that started this project also, and others that joined afterwards. I grew as a scout. I grew as a human being. And that was certainly also a big base for my career development up until the point that I am today. After 2 years as just a scout, I would do work only on weekends for the club, watching several games in several age groups. I was invited. I was sort of promoted to a management position of some of the age groups that the club scouted for, being U10 to U13. This is when I started to work directly with Bruno, by the way, and it was a job of responsibility. It was a job of higher volume, and it took like the 7 days of the week to me. It was a full-time job. And this is where we also developed a lot in terms of department. We grew a lot in terms of scouting department, in terms of number of people, and also volume of work and processes that we were handling. And this is really when this period of 5 years was really when the team started to become more competitive. Some of the players started to grow and started to see potential to develop some of the players for the first team, and it was very gratifying to be part of this as an academy scout, managing 4 years of birth, these 2 age groups. It was important, just not only for me but also for the club. After this, I was invited by the club again to go to Africa and change a little bit the nature of my job. I became a technical director of the Benfica Football School in Luanda, the capital of Angola. This is a former colony of Portugal, so same language, similar culture in some points. And so it was a logical and smooth transition for me to go there and for Benfica to establish a football school there. And it was also a very gratifying job because I got in touch with a different reality that we don't see in the Western world, that's for sure. It was very enriching in terms of my personal life, and the job of a technical director and having a team to manage, a team of people to manage, also set a little bit of the basis for the work I'm doing today. And so in the end, it all made sense. All of the jobs that I had up until today made sense to become the professional that I am now. In 2017, I rejoined a scouting department, and it was Aspire Academy's scouting department. For those of you who don't know Aspire, this is a big sports academy in Qatar, and its football department is responsible for developing the youth national teams of the country, to make sure they are very competitive. First of all, in terms of what it is, the Asian competitions. And then one of the biggest projects was, of course, preparing a team for the World Cup Finals 2022 that you just recently saw for sure on TV. And it was also a very, very nice job. It was my first contact with the Arab world and with the Middle East. And it was very defying. But in the end, I was very happy with the job that I did there. And it also was very important because obviously I'm back now in the Middle East. It was very important for me to have a first contact with that culture, and it prepared me for the job that I have today. 2019, after 2 seasons at Aspire Academy, I rejoined Benfica, this time as a first team scout. There was a restructure of the scouting department of the club. The department not only grew, but it also changed his way of operating. And the person in charge, it was someone that I had worked with in the past. And so I was very happy to receive this invitation from Pedro and rejoin Benfica. First of all, because I love the club since I was a little kid, and everybody knows that it's public. And also for the nature of the job, because it was very challenging, and for me it was a proud moment that I was able to join the first team of such a big club and be involved in the best competitions of club football in the world. After 1.5 years in this job, I got an invitation. An offer I couldn't refuse. Someone who worked together with me in Aspire Academy in the scouting department, he became the sports director of the Al Ain Football Club in the United Arab Emirates. One of his main tasks was to set up a scouting and analysis department, and he reached out to me to see if I was available to come. It was tough because it was kind of my dream job to be in Benfica's first team, but in the end, the responsibility, being in charge of the department, making something from scratch, I think it's something that I identify myself with, and it's been giving me so far a great pleasure to do so. And so this is me in a very short description of my professional pathway up until today. Okay. This is what we're going to talk about today. What is scouting, the types of scouting that exist, the importance of the scouting activities, and then we'll go specifically into recruitment scouting, which is my strongest area, and we will talk about identifying talent in football, the four-corner model, the difference between scouting for academy and first team. We will speak a little bit about growth and maturation because I think it's important for you guys. And then about organizing a scouting department and all the plannings that is involved, suggestions about structure, processes, and then specifically about a scout and his role as a recruitment scout and his profile according to what I see. Again, this is very, very subjective. This is based on my experience and my beliefs, of course, and obviously it reflects a lot of my experience, like I said. So if you see something different, obviously it's normal. And if you have any questions or disagreements, put it on the table. Maybe it will be a way of me changing this presentation. Maybe it will be a way for me to think about something that I never thought about before. So I want to make this interactive and interesting also for you guys. Okay. Until now, there is no questions, right?
Until now, we are okay.
Okay. So we go to what is scouting according to me. To observe, collect information, analyze, evaluate, both subjectively and objectively, of course, teams, players, and coaches with different intentions. I think this is pretty much self-explanatory. You will be providing everyone with the presentation, right, Bruno?
Yes, sir.
Okay, because I tend to go a little bit fast sometimes. If I'm going too fast, please also slow me down.
It's fine. I think that if for some reason people don't understand the way we speak English,
yes, but yeah, bear with me because it's not my mother tongue.
They are free to ask.
Sure, thank you. Okay, the different types of scouting there are and why they are so important. So we can use scouting as a way to analyze our team, analyze its collective and individual performance, And why do we do that? To assist in the creation and optimization of a way of playing, to identify the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats within our team, and also to identify gaps in our game model. We do this by working closely with the technical staff and providing them with constant suggestions about the way they should approach the team. Obviously, before you ask, some coaches are more open to this kind of work than others, obviously. And some setups are different from others. You can have your analysis team within the scouting department that belongs to the club and is independent of the technical staff. And then you have some connecting points or some connecting person within the coach's staff to make this bridge between the department and the coach. And obviously, there are some setups in the clubs that they have they have their own analyst team, and the club doesn't provide an analyst staff for them. In our case, we have an analyst team within the club that we provide assistance to the coach. The coach is our client, sort of saying. Okay, the coach is also our client in the opponent's analysis. Again, it's an analysis in collective, and individual performance, and obviously, it exists to identify the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of our opponents, and we collaborate in the development of each game's strategy. So what we do is we peel off the several layers of the opponent, the several dynamics that they have, both subjectively by an analyst's point of view and objectively by analyzing all the data that we have access to. And then we give some suggestions of how to approach based on our game model and the characteristics of our players. We give them some suggestions of how to approach each of the games. Okay, and then the important one for today, not that it's more important than the others, but what we will talk more about today, the recruitment scouting. And the recruitment scouting is important in clubs to detect, select, and recruit players and coaches, obviously. In national teams to select the best eligible players possible. In sports agencies to select potential new customers. This is a trend now. The agencies have their own scouts, not only to select potential new customers, and this is something I should add here, but also to provide with the best suggestions for the clubs. And in sports brands, the big sports brands, they have now scouts to select players for sponsorship. This is something that maybe where you are is old news, but in football is relatively recent. So in sports brands, it's relatively recent that they have football scouts dedicated to find the right profiles to offer sponsorship agreements. All good so far, Bruno?
Yes. I was thinking on what you're just saying, and yes, I understand what you mean. In other sports like basketball, you would see teams already almost created teams by some sneaker shoes, sneaker brands, I mean. But on soccer, is not so common to have that. So it's very interesting.
Exactly. Oh, sorry, and bear with me about football and soccer. I will refer to it as football. I hope you don't mind. Okay.
I'm sure.
So yeah, basketball was also what it was on my mind when I said for you, obviously, but also football, American football, of course. You have this kind of setup in sports brands for a long time, and in other brands maybe also. So carrying on. This is dictionary definition of talent, which serves very well our purpose. So a group of skills inborn or acquired that influence the success in certain activities. So nature versus nurture. Sublime or extraordinary level of skills that are particularly appreciated and admired. Huge intelligence or awareness. An individual who stands out for the vocation or exceptional inclination to perform a certain activity, in our case, to play football. Okay, so I think this also is pretty much self-explanatory. My view of what is the talented footballer in a very compact way. This is what I like to see on the pitch. And then there is also a world of things I'd like to see outside the pitch, but let's focus for now on what we want to see on the pitch. And in my opinion, the talented footballer sees more and sees better. This is a question of awareness, which is both physiological and also trainable, coachable. He makes good decisions. He not only solves problems for his team defensively and offensively, but also creates problems for the opponents. He deceives, which is something that is very important, and we are losing now with the end of street football. A player that deceives the opponent, that tricks him into thinking that he's going to do something and then he does something else, is becoming more rare, more and more rare. And I think this is something that we should work on for sure, and you guys as the coaches. He executes what he or she imagines, meaning that he has the technical tools to execute what his creativity creates, sort of saying, sorry for the redundance. He dominates the space, he dominates the time. He can use the football rules to his or her benefit, and he associates well with the teammates. Okay, he does all of this at high speed and continuously, meaning that at high speed is, of course, doing it very fast, but continuously, I mean, not only within just one game that you are watching, but also it doesn't have a peak of form, but he has a continuous good performance level.
Yeah, consistency.
Continuously good performance level. Okay, he has consistency. Yes, that's a good word. Okay. Anything, guys?
Yes, I was going to share. I remember during the World Cup, one player from Morocco, a midfielder, number 8, I think. He was standing out during the World Cup, and I saw an interview of the sports director of Leeds, I believe, and they asked him, "Do you know this guy? Why don't you sign him yet?" And they were talking about what you just said now about the consistency. That some players, they stand out in a tournament, so everyone believes he's amazing and he should be the next signing. But they see him during the rest of the season, and he doesn't show the same performance. You know,
exactly.
So is one thing that like one thing is to show one thing one time, another thing is to show it on a weekend basis.
Sure. On the other hand, there's another face of the coin, which is sometimes you don't have time because it's a very competitive sport in terms of recruiting the best talent. And you have to find the sort of the sweet spot between watching the player a lot and make sure you have an informed decision. And at the same time, and you know better than me, or as well as me, we used to live in a very competitive context in Portugal, in which sometimes you have to take risky decisions as a scout. So ideally, we take our time and we assess the consistency of the player over a long period of time and in different situations. But sometimes also you need to make sure you don't lose the player because it takes too long in the assessment. Okay, so keep that in mind because it's a very hard task. The four-corner model, okay, this was obviously not invented by me, and it has a star in the index. I don't know if you've noticed, because it's a little adaptation of the classical four-corner model. I separate the tactical from the technical, not because I don't think they are connected, but I think that in order to break it down in terms of assessment and reporting, I think it's easier to understand. On the other hand, the psychological and social, which are separated on the original model, here I put them together. So it's just a small change. based on my view on what is the best way of especially reporting to the higher management in a way that everybody will understand, even if they are not experts in football. So starting with the tactical, and it's quite extensive. I divide it in 4 big pieces of information. Obviously, I like to look at the player as a whole in a holistic approach. But if you break it down for better understanding and better reporting, it's also very useful. So I break it in 4 big blocks: the tactical, in offensive, defensive, structural, and transitional play. In offensive, what I like to see is a player that wants to progress. He looks far away. This is no news for you, Bruno. He manages the rhythm of play. He attacks free spaces and important spaces. He gives passing lines, wins duels, and finishes actions. Okay, so this is what I like to see offensively on the player. Obviously, there is more stuff, but this is the main stuff. And obviously, this includes actions with and without the ball, because attacking most of the time is without the ball. So it's at least as important as when you have the ball. Defensively, I like a player that steps forward, meaning that there is a player that is proactive in the defensive actions. He recovers his position, especially when someone overcomes him. He closes well the passing lines. He's a duel winner. He follows the opponent's movements in width, depth, whatever, and he delays and rushes the opponent's action. So he has this kind of tactical understanding to understand the moments when he needs to delay or just rush the opponent's actions. Okay. Speaking of structural, he understands the various formations structures. This is both the big formation, your 4-4-2, 4-2-3-1, whatever, and also the smaller structures within the big structure. He understands the game principles, both individual and collective, of course. He manages well the distances. He times his movements well, and he controls the references well. Being the reference, of course, ball, space, his teammate, and the opponent. Okay, and then there is the transition play, in which I like to see a player who is fast to change behaviors accordingly to having or not the ball, and he shows the continuity in his actions, which means that he knows where to be and when to be at all times, and he puts in the work. Questions, guys?
I don't know if there is questions, but
I see a lot in the chat, so maybe if you want to, I see there's 20 messages, but I'm not reading. If you want to take something from there, or should I just carry on?
Yeah, they are not. The questions are not about this.
Okay, so we'll carry on.
Yes, carry on.
Carry on to the technical part and the various offensive and defensive techniques. So offensive, passing, receiving, obviously, first touch, which can be passing, can be receiving, can be a shot, and that's why I make a special reference to the first touch. Ball protection, ball driving or carrying, crossing, dribbling, finishing, heading. Offensive heading can be finishing also, but can also be a pass. So I separate it, and because it's so specific, I think it deserves its own category. And then defensively, the holding position, intercepting, heading, and tackling can be sliding tackling or standing tackling. So the various kinds of tackling. This is pretty simple stuff. I'm sure you guys know better than me. Then the specificity of the goalkeepers, of course. I must say that for most scouts that have a background like me, I was a field player. This is the most difficult part, to scout for goalkeepers, but we do our best. So defensively, the base position and all the angles that the goalkeeper usually positions himself in, the reception and handling, diving, tipping, 1v1 situations, coming out of goal, responding to crosses, so aerial play, and intercepting. By intercepting, obviously, I mean taking care of the space within his box and also in the back of the defensive line. And then offensively receiving and distribution with hands and feet. Physical. There is more coordinative abilities like perception, spatial orientation, balance, motor control, coordination, reaction, anticipation. And then there is your conditional. Speed is a little bit of both, but I included it in conditional because it's somewhat trainable. And then there is endurance, stamina, strength, and flexibility. And then comes for me the most important of all the corners, which is the psychological and social. And I say it's most important in my opinion because it is the one that sometimes separate the good player from the great player. Sometimes it separates the player that will make all his academy pathway and then stop playing or play at a low level, and the one who will go on to have a professional career and play at the highest possible level. And the main points for me, the main categories in which I like to observe a player is decision making, creativity, courage, resilience, self-confidence, self-control, altruism, competitive attitude, leadership, ambition, and communication. I outlined creativity obviously because it's something that we are losing as well. Again, the end or the becoming more rare to see kids playing on the street, at least in the context that I am now and the context I was before in Europe. It's killing creativity, and it's up to us, people working in football, and especially coaches and the technical directors, to stimulate the development of the creativity in the young players. And for me, this is very, very important.
Yeah, critical. We have a question, but I think I'm going to use it later in the presentation because there is one part that you are going to talk about scouting for academy or scouting for performance that I believe the question is better for that moment.
No problem. No problem. So this is it. Some of the differences, there are a lot, but some of the important differences between scouting in academy level and first team level. So they are pretty much opposites. The goal in academy is obviously to recruit players with potential to develop, and the goal in first team is to recruit top performers. Doesn't mean that we don't have young players that can still have potential to develop in a first team level, but it needs to be at a minimum level of readiness to help the team within the objectives that each team has, of course. So in academy, we use broader general evaluation parameters. We may use only the 4 corners and not go into the specificity of each gesture or action as much because it's not so important. And in the first team, obviously, we use general plus specific parameters. You guys working at academy level are lucky to have the use of trial observations. You can call a large amount of players in any given day or a couple of days and assess them within your facilities, playing football or doing any kind of other drills that you find relevant for assessing a player. At the first team level, there is no big trial observations, of course, at least if you are talking about a professional setup. The use of integrated observations, I mean integrated observations as the players who you bring or the set of players you bring to train within your team. Sometimes you make a trial observation. Out of that, you select 2 players, but you are not sure that they have the desirable level to join your team, and so you invite it to train with you, and you assess them within your team, comparing directly to your players. This is more rare in first team football, if it happens at all. In academy, we still do mostly live scouting. I know now with the camera systems that are quite affordable and very, very, very useful and quality stuff, that some companies do. I don't want to make advertising for any of those companies. I can give to you some names later if you don't use them. But now there is some video, some amount of video and even data that you can extract from the academy games, but mostly it's still live scouting. And in first team level is a mix of observation methods. You do video and you do also live scouting. Academy, again, there is still a small amount of performance data if we compare to a professional setup at first team, where there is a big amount of performance data and tracking that you can use in the assessment of the players. At academy, you still have a higher margin of error. Usually, you have multiple teams by age group, and out of that group, you know that it's not expected that all the 15, 20 players they reach the first team. If you can take 1 or 2 for each age group, you will be considered a success. In first team level, if you miss a player, especially if he's an expensive player, you will be in a lot of trouble. In academies, there is a relatively reduced investment. As in first team level, there is a higher investment, of course, because players are expensive, salaries are higher, and it's obviously more expensive for every reason. Okay, so you want to ask the question now?
Yes. Someone was asking, Marcat or Marcar was asking about differences between scouting for first team and scouting for national team.
Well, scouting for first team and national team.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I've never been in national team environment, but I have some colleagues that do, and we speak sometimes. Obviously, in a national team is a little bit more boring because you don't, even though there is a lot of players to follow, you are together with the players much less. You know, it's not as good for the coaches and for the scouts. In terms of not being involved with the work on a daily basis, at least on the pitch and with the players. But when it comes to selecting the talent pool, obviously in the national team, you may be more limited because you are limited obviously by nationality and limited by age also. And then, of course, it's pretty much the same. If it's first team level, you have a lot of video to scout from, and you travel often to watch the teams where your list of players are playing, and you keep assessing them on a regular basis, and you make sure that you try to select for each concentration, for each tournament or game, the best possible group according to your specific objectives. At the club level, obviously you are lucky to be more involved in what is the daily basis training sessions and everything. You get to assess your players more closely because you can be present in the training sessions. This is most of the setups, and my setup in particular at the moment. And this makes your job become a little bit easier in that sense. But in all other aspects, it's pretty much the same. You scout by video or scout by traveling to the stadium and assessing the player's life.
I don't know if this answered the question, but I hope so. We have also a question from João Salgado that maybe you'll want to answer later. The question is, if a new scout arrives to the club, do you clarify the concepts with them so that they are working in the same direction? How does that work?
Yes, I do. Obviously, in the interview phase, I already asked some specific questions that will help me to assess if the scout is used to working in a similar kind of way. And obviously, this will give the scout an advantage in terms of the selection process. And also after the recruitment of the scout, obviously we have a meeting. And for me, what is most important is I give everybody time to adapt. I explain my ideas and I let them go step by step, very slowly. As urgent as the day-to-day tasks are, for me is more important that every new human resource is well prepared, identified with the club culture, identified with the club strategy, identified with the club goals, and also its values, and then identified with the way that I like to work. And then, of course, we can start the day-to-day work and the day-to-day processes. And I'm sure that if you are more prepared for this, it will even take the added pressure from you, from the mental side, and you will be able to do as a scout a much better job.
Of course.
We'll speak a little more about that later.
Yeah, I assume that the more organized the club is, the better integration exists in these situations.
Of course.
Another question that appeared is how do you assess the psychosocial dimension when you have limited interactions with the players?
We try to do everything on the pitch. Everything is done on the pitch. We have those points, I think they are 11, I'm not sure. I will have to go back and count them, but we have a document that I developed to assess all of those points. Those points are then divided in things that you can see on the pitch for each point, which goes up to the amount of 53 points, I think. I'm using my memory. I don't want to go and open the file now. So it will go up to a total of more than 50 things that you can see on the pitch, that each 4 or 5 are related with those points that I showed you before. And then it comes also to when you want to see this, because when I say in the pitch, it's not necessarily during the game. It can be the warm-up, it can be the halftime, it can be those 5 minutes that is still in the pitch after the game is over. It can be an away game, a home game. It can be a situation where the player is in advantage, the situation when the player is losing the game. It can be a situation where the game is tied. It can be a situation where he comes out of the bench, can be a situation where he starts the game, can be a situation when he comes from injury. It can be a situation when he comes from suspension. So there is multiple ways to assess those 50-something points that for me are important in those big 10 or 11 that I showed you before.
Yeah, I was thinking on sometimes how a player reacts when he tries to shoot, but the ball goes wide, and how does he react in that moment if he gets tackled and the referee doesn't call the foul, or the referee doesn't think it's a foul, and how does he react in that moment? If the team suffers a goal, how does he react? All of these can be indications on
yes, and
on how those profiles happen.
And then there is something that for me, and that's why I told you the social, the mental and social, the psychological and social aspect for me is the most important, because if you really think about it, all the other 3, they are connected with the psychological aspect. I was speaking within the tactical, I spoke to you about the transition play, and we want to see continuity. Continuity is not possible without resilience, for instance. So this is a way that we connect all the dots, and that's why I say I have an holistic approach in terms of watching the player. I use all of these aspects just to break it down into a way that I can better understand the player, and also that the people that are going to read my reports can better understand the player. And also when I read the reports of my staff, I can understand better what the player is. But if you really look at it, everything is connected.
I think we can. I think we can carry on. I have a few more questions here, but we'll have time for them.
Okay. Carrying on to the growth and maturation part, just some important concepts. Chronological age, obviously, is the age that is determined by the difference between the day you were born and, for instance, today. I'm ashamed to say my chronological age, but it's between 25 and 50. Biological maturation, it is described as a process to become mature, enabling the organism to progress to higher levels of functioning. And the relative age effect, which is so important in youth football, is the influence that the months of birth can cause on the learning and performance of youth in a certain task and the teaching learning process. Okay, this is very clear, huh? You guys deal with this on a daily basis for sure.
For sure.
Biological maturation can be obviously early, normal, or late, and it has influence in many aspects that then has influence obviously on the performance of the player. Anthropometric measures, so size, weight, everything, muscle metabolism, and then consequently strength, anaerobic performance, aerobic performance, and in the recovery. Okay, and you see an example of an early mature player on the image on the left. The relative age effect and performance. So in general, subjects born on the first quarter, they are relatively older, obviously, and then consequently they are taller, stronger, and faster compared to those born in the last quarter. And they have, and this is the most important thing, they have a greater trend to be selected. And this is what we have to fight, sort of saying. Furthermore, younger athletes and or late mature, they tend, this is tend, sorry, to abandon the sports training process or to be excluded from it due to the low perception of competence and the lack of success. So things that I think are important to consider after we went through all these concepts. Obviously, the time of practice that the player has influences the maturation status and morphology of the players. The early mature players may have potential, meaning that just because you have a player that is clearly early matured and is close to his potential in terms of especially motor ability, it doesn't mean that he cannot become a top level player. Okay, so you need to carefully assess him. To obviously, early mature player will experience success, but you have to make sure you understand where this success comes from. If it's strictly because he has this motor skills advantage over the other players, or if on the other hand, if he wasn't early matured, if he didn't have this physical advantage, would he still be successful? Meaning that if he's a player that he has good decision making, good tactical and technical skills, he shows creativity, he shows all the mental aspects that make a champion, maybe is a player that has potential, and you should not you should not rush into discard this player. Short players obviously may have potential. Endomorph players may also have potential, because you know the body changes with the maturation process. So all kind of body types, they may have potential. Late mature players must be carefully assessed. This is what we talked about before. And then after recruiting a player, we must ensure that he is placed on a context that stimulates the development. So we can use biobanding, we can use the performance banding. There are a few methods that we can use that will help us to put the player in a context that will be the best for his development. This is obviously something that you must be very careful to do.
Sorry to interrupt you. In my opinion, this is one of the high importance slides of your presentation, because it's so easy to look at a player, understand that he's early mature, and to immediately put the stamp on him, saying everything that is showing now is because he's started to develop already, and in a few years he's not going to be here anymore. So this reminder that is not because he started to grow earlier that his ceiling is low. That is very, very important. The same way that a late mature player, in theory, we need to wait for him, but it doesn't mean that he's going to show it. So
Yes.
these things are always very, very difficult, and your role is the kind of role that I really do not envy in an organization, because it's very, very difficult to take decisions. And everywhere, and also here in California, especially right now, we see flyers of tryouts for this team, for the other team, and this, I find this so difficult in already this 20 something years of experience to, I'm not going to say judge, but to look at a player during a tryout and being able to say something about him, like to put him out or to put him in a team, is so difficult that well, I don't know how people can claim to be so certain in the things that they do. Anyways.
Well, a small hint to the ones that are not as experienced in the scouting processes that I can give to you is, obviously the game is a set of problem situations that are presented to the players in any given time. What you should look at is the way that an early mature solves all these problems that are presented to him, and if his problem solving is based on his physical ability alone, or if, on the other hand, he uses a whole bunch of other tools that show us that he has this potential to keep doing so, to keep solving these problems at a higher level. And the same thing for the late mature is, why doesn't he solve these problems? I mean, is the idea there? Is the decision there? Is the technical gesture there? And then obviously, if he doesn't have the power to perform the pass that the game was demanding at any given time, but he saw the passing line, he identified the passing line, he did the technical gesture in a good way, but then it was just a matter of lack of power because he's still late mature, then maybe we should keep looking at him and keep him close to us and try to give him a context where he can develop and we can get to the best version of himself. So I think this is the best hint to the ones that are not as experienced in this matter, is just see how the kids solve their problems or the problems that the game presents to them. And then obviously you can use biobanding, as I told you, to put them in competitive contexts that are based in maturation status. But even so, you need to be very careful when you are doing this. We don't want to give the wrong message to the kids, and we certainly don't want to. We are now in an era where everybody is a champion, everybody gets a medal, everybody gets a cup, and to be honest, I really don't agree with that. So I would say use biobanding, but use it carefully. Okay, because in the end, if you are competing for trophies, you should be true to the age categories and everything else. This is my opinion. Again, it's personal opinion. Should I carry on?
Yes,
Any
sir.
more? Okay. Okay, and when we go to the scouting department part, and first of all to the planning, which should be aligned with the history, mission, vision, values, and strategy of the club. This is very, very, very important point. One of the most important points of setting up a scouting department, if not the most important. A scouting department will be different in many ways, depending on where you try to set it up. It will be different in a North American club, from a South American club, from a European club, for a national team, like you asked before. And it should be aligned with these points because they are very important. The history of the club, it's obviously what made and keeps the fan base. So it should be respected. The mission, vision, and values in the strategy are obviously what should orientate all the steps and all the departments of the club. So if you don't know these points well, you cannot set up any department, let alone a scouting department, which is something so complex. It should be obviously adjust to the existing financial conditions, meaning you shouldn't bite more than you can chew, sort of saying. Consider the specificity of the context. Here it's not just regarding the club, but also the country and this social tissue, the competitions that the club is involved in, the teams that are under your supervision, the climate, which, by the way, here where I am now, it's very important. And then obviously all the rules and regulations that compose the competitions. After you set up, you should obviously understand the strengths and deficiencies of the team or teams that you are in charge of scouting for. And then you should establish the best practice in all procedures according to those strengths and weaknesses. And you should guarantee that you and your staff have all the necessary tools to the procedures that you are going to impose. Okay. Any questions about this, Bruno?
No, I think we're good. This is when we were talking about the how to integrate a scout in a club would be in this part.
Yes. Obviously, you need to show them what the club is, like I told you before, and then we speak about the specificity of the context, and this is something that takes some time, and that's why I say I don't rush the people to go into the day-to-day tasks without knowing the specificity of the context, because it's so important, especially the nature of the competition, the climate, and the regulations. They are very important. And then we go to the procedures, and I explain to them what is the best practice in my opinion. Obviously, it may not be the best practice, but in the end of the day, I am the responsible for running the department, so I should show him the way, and I will be the responsible for the results. So I should show him the way that we need things to be done. An example of an organizational structure in a very simple way. Once the planning stage is concluded, we must create this, obviously, to help the members to understand their role within the department, the hierarchy, the job titles, and the number of employees needed in each position. I didn't put everything in the graphics. This is just for you to have an idea. And then we have a document, obviously, with the detailed functions and responsibilities of each position, developed together by us and HR department. And this, in the end, is what is expected for each individual. A simple example of the scouting workflow. There are 3 big phases: the detection, selection, and recruitment of players. Within each of the phases, there are important steps and important things to consider. This is obviously adapted to, I can say, Europe, and also the context that we are now, because the calendar is very similar. So within the department, this is an example of a scouting and analysis department, so not just recruitment scouting. But if you look closely to the first 3 points, you see detection is something that doesn't stop, and we'll speak about that later. Selection is a little bit closer to the time just before opening the transfer windows. And recruitment obviously is conditioned by the transfer windows.
Yeah, of course.
So there's really nothing you can do there. Detection. To explain the 3 points in a more specific way, it is the phase of identification of players that appear to have sufficient quality or potential to be recruited. Again, first team more emphasis on quality of performance. Academy, more emphasis maybe on potential. It's a continuous and uninterrupted process. That's why if you turn back here, you see the big purple bar going across the whole season. The observation of all or many players in the same game is frequent, and I can tell you it's very, very hard. And for those of you who had this experience, for sure, if you're looking at an 11-a-side game, it's hard to keep track of everyone. And that's why the reports should be simple and short, in my opinion. And when you are in doubt, you should grade higher. Meaning, don't remove that player from your list or add this player to your list if you are in doubt. And obviously, there is a mixed method between live and video observations, and especially in first team football, as we talked before. Okay?
Yes.
Selection is when we reduce the talent pool, and then we put it on a smaller list of the ones the scouting department believes that they have all the conditions to be recruited. These conditions are obviously related to the performance level, the potential, and sometimes if you have access, is also related to the financial aspects of the operation. And obviously, and especially when you are talking about first team football, there's a whole other social side outside of the pitch. There's obviously also injury history, suspension history. There's a lot of all aspects that come into play here in the selection phase. So the detection is more pure football. Selection is peeling the player layer by layer to make sure you know him from top to bottom, from inside to outside, and you have an informed decision, because this is it. And you make your shadow team, and it will go to the higher management, and this is your name on this shadow team. And if the player is recruited, you will have the responsibility. So priority is to watch the player in live games whenever it's possible. And then you apply the filtering system by other scouts, by the head of scouting. And sometimes if you have a setup that includes the sports director as a piece of the scouting puzzle, you can even have a third filter. The report should be more comprehensive by all the reasons that I stated before in the beginning of the slide. There should be a detailed statistical analysis when it's possible, of course. You should have a definition of how to frame the player within your squad, meaning position and role. And after this, you do the placement in the shadow team. This is an example of the shadow team on your left, with all amazing and very expensive players, of course.
Yes. Gonçalo, thinking on this, because you were talking now about roles and positions in the pitch, a question came out from Javier Vicente about physical characteristics when you are identifying players for positions. So when you are
physical
characteristics, I assume that he's talking about height, maybe speed as well. My question would be, to which positions do you think that these parameters are critical, and to which positions do you believe that they are not critical?
Height, mainly and almost only goalkeepers. And then depending on the remaining characteristics of the center back. The center back must be tall if he doesn't show me a few other characteristics. Some of them also motor skills, like vertical jump, for instance.
Yeah.
Speed, which would be very important, and especially acceleration, to be able to anticipate and be as effective in the air as a tall player would be. This is just a small example, but mainly goalkeepers. Also a little bit center backs if he doesn't have, like I told you, the remaining characteristics. And like I told you, some of them are also motor skills. Obviously, speed for me is important in every player, but maybe when you ask about speed, you're referring more to sprint speed and acceleration. But obviously, if you have a player who is not so fast in sprint and is not so explosive, but he's fast in the decisions, fast in the execution of the technical gestures, fast in the way he interprets what the game is asking from him, obviously you will have a means to compensate for that lack of speed. But I have my personal preference, and especially outside player roles, like fullbacks, wingers, and center backs. I like them to be very fast and explosive, if possible. If possible. Again, this is a game of going first of all for the perfect player, and then when you realize the perfect player doesn't exist, is negotiating with yourself and your team. What are you willing to give up first? Is it speed? Is it strength? Is it height? So for each role and within your game model and within your squad and within your needs, obviously, that come from your game model and your squad characteristics, which characteristic, which feature are you willing to give up first? Because there are no perfect players, and there is a bunch of players that they check all the boxes that I told you about here for each position, but those usually are very, very expensive. They are at reach of a handful of clubs only, and national teams, of course.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions, or should I?
There are more, but I think
okay, we
can
on.
continue. Yeah.
All right.
I will not forget the questions that I have here.
Okay. In the end, you can make all of the questions. It's okay. The recruitment is obviously the final stage, and it's where all the details are finalized and the player joins the club. Usually our department doesn't participate, or it participates only in the initial phase. It's more of a bridge for contacts. It's mainly made by the head of the department. And like I told you, is just to build bridges between both clubs, our club and the player's agent, and our club and the player. And why this happens, because scouts usually, because they travel so much, they develop a network of people within all the clubs, federations, and every other institution related to football, which allow us in a very little amount of time to get in touch with pretty much any club in the world. And this is where we can be useful in the recruitment process, just to build a bridge for contact. Okay. Finn was our last signing. He's not here for any particular reason. It's just to give you an example of a player in which the recruitment process was successful, and we signed him in the last transfer window, winter transfer window. Okay. No questions about this topic, yeah? We can.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, moving on to the last of the points in the index, a scout's role. So like I told you, we have definition for each one of the people that integrate the scouting department of what's the role and what is expected from him, her. So to scout by watching competitions, matches, training sessions, as per the demands of the department, by, like I told you, video or live. Follow and report about our players that are on loan at other clubs, produce other specific reports as per the demands of the department. This has more specific points, but I think these are the most important ones and the clear ones. So the profile of the scout, again, this is subjective. This is my opinion based on my experience and beliefs. On the left, the most important. And the first point for me is the most important of them all. Integrity, especially if you are, it's always important, obviously, but especially if you are in the level of professional football where big amounts of money are involved. If your integrity is not something that you have at the highest level, sooner or later you'll get into trouble. Obviously, passion is very important for the game of football because the hours are long, the travels are frequent, you take time from your family and friends, and you need to have a higher level of passion to endure through all this effort. You have to have adaptability. Obviously, you are in touch with a lot of different cultures in a lot of different countries. You have to be proactive. You can't wait for the information to fall on your lap. You have to be resilient, and this is connected to the passion. You have to be competitive. You have obviously to have communication skills to develop the network that also I told you about before. And so you create relationships with external stakeholders if you are a good communicator. And then more technical aspects, theoretical knowledge of the game. And I try to give you a little bit of that here, but also there's a big amount of courses nowadays. When I started, there were no courses about scouting. So now you can take training courses, you can take scouting courses, analysis courses, you can read about football online in a number of websites. You can buy specific books about scouting and analysis, which are very well written and full of useful information. So nowadays it's a little bit easier than when we started. So experience in the game as a player, a coach, or other relevant function. When I say relevant function here, doesn't mean you have to be in a very important position within the organization, but means that to me is important that you deal with players on a constant basis, because you need to understand a player and how his mind works and why he does what he does in order to assess a player.
Yeah.
This for me is very, very important. So if you can be around players as a referee, as a massage therapist, physiotherapist, sports psychologist, technical director, whatever, as long as you are a constant presence or players are a constant presence around you, and you can understand them well, and you can communicate with them, and you can hear them communicate between themselves, I think this is very, very important for our job. Okay, and then, as I told you before, knowledge about the institution, the team, the social and competitive context, and for the reporting part, ability of written expression. These for me are the main. There are more, obviously, but they are the main aspects that I like to see in a scout. Okay. So maybe questions now, and then we go for the last slide.
Well, first the question that I had I told you the other day, thinking on that role, and not asking you to name names. When you took a bigger role in that beautiful club with the red shirt, and I was lucky enough to be part of the coaching staff of that age group. There was a kid in the middle of many that I remember thinking during training sessions, like, why is this kid here? Yes, like he can do some things, but I don't see him here in 2 years. Why is he here? And then other kids that showed incredible things, that showed a speed of learning that put them in the best of the best of that age group in the country. All of a sudden, 8 years pass, and that kid that I thought was there almost by mistake is the first one reaching the first team. And well, I don't know if he has right now the career he showed when he arrived in the first team, but he's having a very, very good career. And I wish many players could have the opportunities he had. So my question here is, when a scouting department brings a kid to a club and he has such difficulties in the training session that is creating problems because of lack of understanding, lack of coordination, almost feels like he shouldn't be there. What can you tell the coach to help him believe?
Well, first of all, in academy context, I'm a big fan of limiting the coach's impact on the player's future. Okay, the coach must have a say in the right place and in the right time. But in the end, technical coordinator and scouting department should have a bigger weight on the decision, especially to recruit or release players. Okay, this is my belief again. I understand and accept that people might think otherwise. Why do I say this? Because usually technical directors and scouting department managers, they have the not only the experience of looking for the team and to the player from the outside in. They are not emotionally as involved as the coaches, but also because they have usually the tendency to know better the outside market. So there is no use of recruiting a player when you have another better player to bring, and there is no use of getting rid of a player when there is no better player to join. And you know that this is not a job of making up teams, but a team needs a minimum of players to function well within a season. And so there are limited but usually high amount of places within a team, and you need to make sure that they are filled with the best possible players. So the scout knows the market, the technical director usually knows the market, and both of them, they are not as involved emotionally with the team as the coach is. And for this, I think that even though the coach has a weight as a specialist in training and developing the player, and as a person that deals with the player a high amount of time, he should have his say, obviously, in the right place and the right time, but the highest amount of the responsibility should fall under the scouting department and the technical director of the club. Okay, this is part one. Part two is we are going to always make mistakes, and we should embrace it. And if I told you otherwise, I would be only presenting here to promote myself. And I tell you honestly that I remember more the mistakes that I made than the players that I got right. So, and this is with all honesty. So this is part two of my answer about this question. Part three, coming to a possible solution, and for me there are two. If you are in a context where you don't have a lot of clubs around you, you should make sure that in the younger age groups you have as many teams as your infrastructure and your manpower allows you to have, in order to reduce the amount of these mistakes that you know you're going to make anyway. But at least you try to reduce them, meaning that the pyramid must be broad in its base, in my opinion, as broad as it can be until as late as it can be. If, on the other hand, your competitive context is made of a lot of clubs of the same or similar dimension around you, I think is the job of a federation or an association to create rules and conditions in which it's not that easy for a club to take a player from the other club until they reach a certain age. Okay, and I know this is maybe a little bit controversial, but this is again my personal view. If until under 14 or 15, which is usually around the time that there is puberty, 14, 15, 16, the players stay within their competitive context, and this competitive context is similar. There is not a big difference in the training quality. There is not a big difference in the infrastructure. I think that on the long term, national teams, for instance, and the main clubs that are competing in the top tier leagues will be benefited by this. Okay, so this is one of the solutions also. So I hope that I answered your question.
You did, and you did so well that it's one of the reasons why you are here with that
Thank you.
beautiful beard, talking about this
Thank you.
subject, because because the view that you have, the ability that you have to detach and talk about these situations is shows the level that you are and the experiences that you have, but also shows us a different set of glasses that sometimes we have on our faces. So that's very important. Trying to go for questions that I found here. Let me go back.
Just while you look, the guys can read the key takeaways. So
Yes.
I will not read through them. Just you will have the presentation, and maybe they will also motivate you for different questions.
Question from Lionel Manzares here. What is your strategy to keep a player in a loop whose technique is well developed, but maturation slower than others? How much time do you give him?
Well, like I told you before, it depends on how broad your pyramid is in the base, and how old is this player. You keep him until you can't keep him anymore, meaning that if it's past puberty and you still see that he has difficulties in the motor skills part of his football, probably will never be fast, probably will never jump high, probably will never, so you keep him for as much as you can, and obviously this is hard, and like I told you, we'll always make mistakes, and you can only hope that you reduce the mistakes to a minimum.
Edgar Santos has a question here. He's talking about maturity, and he's asking, how do you prepare a player for that level? How do you sharpen the diamond? Well, I believe this is a question for another webinar. Maybe the webinar that we will have with Edgar Cardoso.
Yes, this is more from a coaching point of view, maybe.
Yes, might be a better question for him. So Edgar Santos, if you are still here, please make sure to register for the next webinars, because we'll try to answer this question. Hugo Enciso talking about how he sees that players are not given the freedom to make mistakes, and this punishes creativity. Again, it's the same situation. This would be about how to live the training experience and how to live the competition experience. We will for sure talk about that in other webinars. Unless, Gonçalo, you want to say your thoughts about this.
Well, I have a strong opinion on killing creativity. That's why it's one of the key takeaways there, as you can see. And I think again, I don't want to be critical of coaches. Coaches are vital and very important in this game. They are, maybe after the players, the most important piece of the puzzle. But I see, especially at younger ages, some coaches being a little bit, I'm sorry to use this expression, but control freaks in the way that they create rules and conditions in order to achieve a playing style that they want to see, and that is based on their beliefs and their experiences and their fears. and their frustrations and their everything. Meaning that, especially in younger age, what I like to see when I go to see a training session is moments of complete freedom, and games, small-sided games or big-sided games, whatever you want, in which the rules and conditions stimulate the creativity instead of killing it. So I don't know if this answers the question, but this is my point of view.
Yeah, I listen to you, and that quote, why should my knowledge limit my players, comes into mind.
Yes, of course. And especially why should my willing to win at such a young stage should be also, because this is a big problem.
Of course.
It's always been, and I think it will always be when you're talking about youth coaching. Even though I have some pictures here that this one player, this one girl is kissing a trophy, but I think this is the least important when we are talking about developing the players. Obviously, it's important to win, and we should always try to win, but win in a way that it's going to teach a lesson and it's going to contribute to the development of your players.
And the opponents.
And also the opponents, of course.
Hugo Inciso also asks here, at what age would you consider appropriate for a player to have an agent?
Oof.
And well, and to really make
Never.
this. Yeah.
Never.
No, he's saying
I'm
this
sorry
because
if there is an agent here. I'm so sorry.
He's saying this because imagine that two professional clubs are looking at a player, and in the end, because of the relationships failed or something, or the clubs cannot make peace, the transfers don't go through. At what point an agent would help a player?
Like I told you, in my opinion, personal opinion, never. In the point of view of how it's set up, the rules now and everything, we are talking about a transaction, and for this, if a player is underage, I don't think he should be able to make this decision. What we see is the tutors or the parents, sometimes they make this decision for the player because they fear that they will not have, and it is the case many times, they will not have the same amount and level of opportunities if they don't sign for this or that agent. And that is part of the reason I say never. Players should never have an agent, because this would be maybe a way to have equal opportunities for everybody, based only on meritocracy. But the way it's set up and how they are needed, I would say if you're underage, you shouldn't have an agent. If you are over the age of 18, you can have an agent. This should be, in a perfect world, it should be like that.
Yeah. The questions that are coming up, I believe they are much more into a webinar about, or a conversation about style of play and the decisions into how you should approach competition than about the subject of this webinar about scouting. So if anyone has other type of questions that could be directed to Gonçalo, please go ahead.
Don't be shy, guys.
Well, if nothing else comes, Gonçalo, it was a pleasure to share this moment with you, one of many.
Thank you.
I'm sorry that we couldn't be face to face to share a coffee as well, but hopefully that will come soon. Hope that you come to visit one of these days.
Yes, I hope so too. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you to everybody who is attending, and hopefully, yeah, I will see you soon.
For everyone else, this was the first webinar that we did for coach education here in Cal South. We are going to do many more, so please keep paying attention, follow our social media, and through our coach association, we will also share this information with you so that you can be updated. Again, my email is here on the chat again. So any suggestions, people that you believe should be on the webinar, please let me know. I look forward to hear from you. And well, that's it.